Welcome to another Meta Performance podcast. Sean here again. I've got Coach Michael with me. How you doing?
I'm doing great. I realize I figured out what my role is on this call as we get into this
You're going to
discussion.
tell me now, or are you going to let me figure it out as I go and guess later?
No, you invited me because of the topic, and I think it's the fact that I'm an aging athlete.
Yeah. I don't know. Is it aging or aged?
I'm pretty well aged.
Yeah, you're pretty well aged. I am as well. And so I am super fired up that we have the authors of Staying in the Game, which is a new book that's out. For those that do listen and know me, it doesn't have as many pictures as you would think for me to read it, but I read it. And so I wanted to grab Regan and Sharon and get them on here and talk about kind of the highlights of it. And hopefully people will then purchase the book and read through. I thought it was great. Welcome. How you guys doing?
Awesome. Good to be here. Thank you.
So that I don't screw it up, can you guys give your quick bios, of how not how we got here, because, it was the book, but give us your background.
Yeah, let me go ahead and lead off with that. So, Sean, Michael, it's so great to join y'all today. And I'm Dr. Regan Stiegman. I am very honored and very proud to have co-authored Staying in the Game with Sharon. I am a physician by background. I've taken every path less traveled in my professional career, which is the delight of probably why we're here today, even discussing this performance medicine effort with respect to how that applies to athletes and how performance is seen. So I spent 11 years in the U.S. Air Force as a flight surgeon. I helped to introduce the concept of lifestyle medicine or lifestyle performance medicine into the U.S. military and the DoD. So go figure, a lot of where I come from in this perspective has to do with how do we optimize warfighters and how do we optimize what is and should be, in theory, the superior athletes of our militaries. I knew that I could approach medicine in a different capacity, and that capacity landed on how do we heal, or how do we, dare I say, even perform better as human beings. And this is the high firepower evidence-based approach that Sharon and I now distilled into Staying in the Game. And what I do clinically in my visits with patients and how I teach medical students and medical residents throughout the US and worldwide as well. And really just making a case for approaching not only health, but physiologic performance through a different lens that has remarkable return on investment for people who dare try. So that's a little bit about my background. So Sharon, I'll toss the mic over to you.
All right. One of the things I love about Regan is her vision for the world is she wants to change it. She wants to make it better on a global scale. So I have a PhD in sports science, which I won't say how long ago I graduated from that, but my first job was at the Olympic Training Center in Colorado Springs. So I worked in the sports science division, got to do a bunch of research on elite athletes relating to performance, stress, and so on. Then I moved on to work for a company called the Center for Creative Leadership, which focuses primarily on leadership development for senior leaders. And I was the global manager for something called Fit to Lead. So we incorporated a wellness component, a fitness component, nutrition component into the leadership training based on the assumption that being a leader is physically demanding as well as mentally demanding and requires a measure of good health. And so that was quite visionary at the time. I'm now semi-retired as a professional. I still continue to do a little bit of work, but now I can focus a little bit more on my passions of training and writing. So I enjoy, I started running in college, and then as part of that, I read a magazine called Runner's World, which I know is still around today, and read this article about this race in Hawaii called the Ironman. And this was back in the late 80s.
Yeah.
And early 80s. And I read that article and was like, I want to do that one day. So that sort of launched my my time as an endurance athlete. And so that's Yeah, that's where I am today. Continue to do that 40 plus years later. So,
And Sean and Michael, if I may, if I learned anything, it's learning how to brag on the people who are doing remarkable work, but who are far too modest to do it themselves. So I have to interject shortly just to set the pace for our listeners or attendees or watchers, people who are watching this. Sharon herself is, she's done 9 Ironmans, first and foremost.
Wow.
The cover of the book itself is actually from her most recent Ironman, where she took the top slot of the podium of her age group in Kona. And so I love that photo because it encapsulates, true to form, some of the most relevant from a chronologic standpoint. Also, something I love about Sharon, she is a national championship winner in 7 different disciplines. And that includes things like Xterra, Nordic skiing, Ironman, 70.3s. I mean, it's winter triathlon. Like, this woman is a marvel. And we really like to put our money where our mouth is. We love providing opportunities and experience and deliverables to people, but we also like showing them that we don't just tell you what to do. We show up and we do what we tell you what we want to do too. So I just had to add that interjection in really quickly.
It's crazy, isn't it, Sharon, how Ironman back in the day, if you were dumb enough to write a check and book a flight, you could go, and now it turned into qualifying and everything else. Like back in the day, like you're going to go do what? Now they're like, it's just a pile of people. I find the most impressive part of that is actually the winter/summer thing, because I'm a summer triathlete. The Nordics I'll do for fun, but I completely suck at it, and so being competent in both of those is really, really impressive.
Thank you.
I always do a speed round, so it's really quick. Because I'm not that bright, I definitely don't have a PhD. I'm going to go left to right. So it's always Regan, you go first, and then Sharon. Are you tea or coffee?
Coffee. What do you think I'm on right now? It'll come out. Just wait.
Coffee.
Coffee. Your favorite workout?
Oh man, incline walking, heavy weightlifting. A.
Okay.
Nordic skiing and mountain biking by far.
Okay. You have a weekend away. Are you going to spend it in a posh resort, or are you going to go rough it in a tent in the woods?
I'm going to be on a secluded beach in Hawaii.
Okay.
As I get older, it gets more posh, for sure.
I'll tell you the most interesting thing about that is I always say posh or camp, but I should probably switch to mountain or beach at some point, because there's an inordinate number of people who pick neither and go beach. And it's not, I don't know, posh resort on the beach is then number one, because I guess you don't want to camp. Your pre-race meal of choice.
Oh my God. Tons of delicious bread items.
Oatmeal.
Your oatmeal, steady.
Fruit. Yeah, banana. Yeah.
And then chunky or creamy peanut butter?
Chunky.
Okay. Wow, that's a high number of them.
It is.
Actually, Sharon, for the people that have been around Colorado, in my professional life, I ask this everywhere I go, and it's generally 2/3, 3/4 creamy. And the only place it was ever predominantly crunchy, take it for what you're worth, was in Colorado. It just seemed to align really well.
That's an interesting data set right there. What does it say? I don't know.
Small, before you beat me up, I'm in the data world, but N size is small, but it's there. So I want to get into the top items in the book, but if one of you wants to lead off with what are the kind of the top highlights and ways to stay in the game, but give me, and I didn't ask you guys about this prior, I should have, to prepare. Give us a 30-second, 60-second overview of the book, like just what people expect, and then dive in and let's, for those of us looking for do they make Cliff Notes anymore? They turned into Spark Notes.
They should. That'd be great. Can we bring that back? Can we revive that in 2026?
It turned into Spark Notes. Like Cliff Notes became illegal, so they called them Spark Notes, and maybe now it's just called AI. Go in. But if one of you can give us just a quick overview for people of what the book is about and kind of the goal of what it was, and you leaned into it a little bit earlier, Regan, and then let's start picking apart the really the do's in there and what you've seen and how people can stay in a long time.
Perfect. Sharon, why don't you go ahead and launch, and I'll circle back.
Yeah. I would say the overarching emphasis and theme of the book is looking at the impact of lifestyle, predominantly nutrition, but also other aspects of lifestyle like stress management and sleep, on the biological systems that allow us to move through the world. So moving through the world for you as an elite athlete or just someone who wants to stay fit and healthy, what are the systems that allow us to do that? So if you think about it, it's the cardiovascular system, immune system, metabolic systems, joints, muscles, digestive system. So, how does lifestyle then impact the performance of these systems? But not only the performance, but also how they, the longevity of these systems, I guess. And so we know that there's some decline with age, obviously. But I think one of the highlights of the books is we get into a little bit the biology behind why these systems decline with age. And when we understand the physiology, we can understand the fix, or what are some things that you can do to slow that decline, and continue to have what we call performance longevity as through the decades. Yeah.
So, what are the big findings? So, the cheaters version as you go of like, how do you stay in the game? And it's rare I get to be on, actually, Sharon, with someone who I think 2026 will be my 38th year at triathlon, and that someone on here with me can be like, you're just getting started. So, why'd you get in so late? So, how do you, what are the highlights for people being able to stay in it that long, based on the book?
Yeah, I think there's several things that, like we said, the core of the book is predominantly around eating a diet that's very rich in nutrients and something we call has a lot of nutrient density. And the reason for this is there's a couple. There's plenty of reasons, but the primary reasons I think from an aging perspective is as we get older, our ability to produce endogenous sources of things like antioxidants or nitric oxide goes down. Our blood pH tends to get a little more acidic, which is more catabolic versus anabolic. Our telomeres get a little bit shorter. And so if you look at these things that sort of result in the aging process, can we offset some of these losses by consuming diets that are high in antioxidants, that have nitrate-rich vegetables, for example, that promote or quench oxidative stress, that reduce inflammation? That's another thing that goes up with age, is inflammaging, as you know, which of course compromises recovery and so on and so forth. So we can offset some of these age-related losses by consuming a diet that's rich in these nutrients, by getting adequate sleep, or limiting or avoiding things like alcohol, lots of alcohol, other toxic substances, managing stress, and exercise by itself, particularly as performed by endurance athletes like Ironman athletes and triathletes, is quite stressful. It stresses these systems. And we walk this constant fine edge between stressing the system and building it up and healing it. And so often we justify perhaps poor eating habits because we train so much, because we put in 20 hours or 15 hours or 10 hours a week of exercise. We're like, well, I can eat sort of what I want. Now, from a weight management perspective, that might work for a while. Right. But at the end of the day, we want those systems to heal. And so as an older athlete, personally, my excuse for training as much as I do, which I love, is I eat a healthy diet. Therefore, I can continue to train and compete without destroying my body in the process.
It's interesting you say it, because I think a lot of athletes that age, and are younger, are I train, therefore I can eat. As opposed, I eat, therefore I can train. So it's kind of the last sentence of what you said is really kind of profound in that. What would you like to add, Regan?
Yeah, I think that the beauty part of this, I think, is level setting the bubbles and people understanding the actual medical subspecialty. So that is what I am certified in. So I'm double board certified in preventive medicine and lifestyle medicine. And lifestyle medicine is one of the fastest growing and widely sweeping medical subspecialties out there, and rightfully so. It is a 6-pillar system. And again, this is based 100% on the evidence. I am a physician. I am a scientist. I am a researcher. This is not my opinion. This is not Sharon's opinion. This is us doing the legwork. This is us doing the dirty work with almost 1,800 citations in this book. This is us vetting it. This is us showing you true to form what you'll see in the book itself. But lifestyle medicine, 6-pillar system, your health is predicated based on what you eat, how you move, how you sleep, how you think, how you moderate risky substance use, and how you mitigate stress, with a huge focus on what you're eating. Because next to breathing and sleeping, what are you doing most reliably? What is the thing that is most controllable from your human decision standpoint? So that's where I come in to adding a little bit more clinical flair to the book. And you'll see peppered throughout Staying in the Game are a handful of clinical vignettes or clinical case studies where we're showcasing things that most people, certainly in the West and the US, they're just habituated to the narrative of like, oh, Sean or Michael, if you get a diagnosis of high blood pressure or high cholesterol, so sorry, you're just going to be on meds the rest of your life. Or if you get a metabolic de-optimized diagnosis like prediabetes or type 2 diabetes, so sorry, we're just going to medically manage you and you're just going to have disease forever. Like, that's absolutely not the cadence that should be conveyed. And that's where I come screaming down the pike as a former athlete myself in saying, hey, we can do better for our patients, for ourselves, and for how we approach our physiologic performance. And this is the flavor that I love weaving in because, as Sharon sort of alluded to, there's a synergy when you dial in that 6-pillar system to how truly optimized your human body and your human system can function. And I hesitated a bit because I have to revector myself from my military narrative. We call it literally the human weapon system in the military. So guess what? Cool. If you're not in uniform, you are a human performance system. And this is where we write out by essentially by system, by operating system, so to speak, of the human body, how to dial in and some of the historical narrative and relevance of that to 2026 and beyond. It's basically, I'll age and date myself here. It's turning your human system up to 11. So for those of you who appreciate Spinal Tap, I'm right there with you. And this, dare I say, becomes the fun part of healthcare, where how you not only dial in your health, get rid of disease, the most common things, again, that we see, metabolic de-optimization, type 2 diabetes, prediabetes, hypertension, high cholesterol, etc. This is where your health and your performance becomes a party and not a prison. And again, like I cannot tell you, it's fun having people coming into your medical clinic who are actually excited to see you because they're like, oh my God, I hacked what I was after with you. I don't have to go on meds. I'm actually recovering faster. I'm running faster, etc. So it's a delight. And I love that this is where I've landed in a professional capacity as a doc too.
And I would add, Sean and Michael, you can't be a good athlete in your later years if you're suffering from these chronic conditions. And if you look at the numbers within Ironman, for example, as you get into the older age groups, it drops off precipitously, largely due to the fact that they come down with some sort of condition that curtails their ability to train and to perform as well and to compete.
Well, it's interesting you say that, Sharon, because for me, I've always said, everyone always talks about aging up, and that's a good thing. But when you're chasing Conus plots, it's actually a bad thing. Because the people who have made it a quality lifestyle, it's their lifestyle. They look at the overall picture, they stay. And so, what was 10 slots becomes 6 slots, becomes, 15 slots, because the people who probably didn't tackle all those issues over the years or, had stuff come down, they're the ones not part of the mix in the slot allocation. And the, 20 or 30 cats that have made it a lifestyle and have committed to kind of tackling all those different pillars, they're still the ones chasing fewer spots.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I find it more impressive when people keep going because there's just, there are just fewer spots.
Yeah, there's something interesting. I mean, what I love is that you're really trying to go from this reactive and getting ahead of the curve to help people slow down the slowdown, as my dad used to like to say. And it's what also resonated a lot with me is just the synergy between what we at Meta do, which is really treating the whole athlete, whether they come to us as an athlete or whether they come to us. I do some professional coaching as well. And both of those client sets are always a little curious why, when I'm talking to one of my athletes, I want to know about how are you sleeping? How are you recovering? I want to be tracking your HRV and your resting heart rate. I want to know about how you're eating. I want to know what's going on at work, because, stress is stress, whether it's work stress. I mean, the physiological response is the same. And similarly, on the professional side, I want to know, what are you doing to get out and exercise? What are you doing to sleep well? Because you need that in your work life as well. So it really syncs up a lot with what we do at Meta when we're working with our clients. Is we have to treat you as the whole person and not just the athlete or not just the executive, because all of that stuff adds up to that quality of life.
100%.
Can you guys talk quick about the 6 pill, like, the high as best as you can without,
Oh yeah,
description?
absolutely. And Michael,
what
as you were speaking, sorry, Sean, go ahead and finish your thought.
Yeah, no, I'm curious just so people get a high level view of the 6 pillars.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And Michael, as you're speaking about like how you have that narrative and conversation with your clients, like immediately I'm like, is he going to say, does he ask them how much fiber they're eating every single day? Like, are we doing little nugget pieces too? Because guess what? That becomes reflexively the first comment that I ask every single patient in my room. And in my clinic room, I should say, people are like, well, it's fiber. And I'm like, oh my goodness gracious. This is the biggest, best kept secret, in my opinion, that I think people are going to be so jazzed to start to experiment on with themselves. And again, the return on investment, I will say, trying again to vector away from the military references, this is the closest thing to a silver bullet that I have ever seen, from whether or not you're trying to dial in your health, whether or not you're trying to dial in your A+++ game as an athlete, or what. And so I think to that point, Sean, so food and dietary choice. For a little context setting, I come from a very robust farm family. I am originally from Colorado, but both my mother and father. My mother's from Iowa. My father's from Illinois. We are farm family through and through, 800 acres, corn and soy. Yes, we like the meat and potatoes. Guess what? That was how I was raised. And most of the people in the United States, for that matter. We were very short on vegetable consumption, fruit consumption. We stuck to meat and dairy and sugar probably 3 to 5 times a day, quite honestly. And that dialed into my own performance as an athlete. I was a soccer player, basketball, softball, you name it. I elected to go the path of soccer. I got to the Olympic development level. However, I had blown my ACL out twice before I was 18. So it wasn't a factor of if I was going to get injured again, it was going to be when. And so, hey, if I would have known some of this really dialed in component pieces that Sharon and I capture in the book, specifically as it relates to female athletes and cycle relevance to ligamentous injury and things of that nature, like that would have changed my life. However, going back to the discussion about food and why it matters so much, particularly in the nutrition sense, we have found that it's about 3% of Americans meet the mark for required daily adequate fiber intake. And guess what? It is truly the lack of fiber in the U.S. diet that is what is killing us younger and faster. Colon cancer rates, cardiovascular rates, you name it. So the quick hit for food is, hey, start focusing on how you can integrate more fiber pieces. Fiber is found in anything that grows from the ground. Plants, veg, fruits, seeds, nuts, legumes, beans, you name it. If it grows from Mother Nature, it has fiber. And the magic number for daily targets, it varies based on gender, but an even keel I like to share with patients, 25 to 30 grams of real fiber a day, not just, pulverized Metamucil that you're slamming down with your water because, you want a quick fix. Eat real food, eat the rainbow. And that's the big target for food. Sharon, do you want to chime in on maybe one of your other favorite pillars of lifestyle medicine?
Yeah. So the second one is movement and daily movement. And of course, as of athletes, we probably do this to excess.
Right.
And I think one of the cautionary tales that we discuss is if you look at, going from sedentary to being moderately active, that's where you see the biggest benefits in terms of mortality. But as you start to add training sessions and longer workouts, there's something called the reverse J curve, where the mortality, it starts to bend back up towards higher rates of premature mortality. It depends on the study. It either flattens out or tends to curve back up. And, paradoxically, if you look at older males who run a lot of marathons, who do a lot of heavy exercise, they actually have higher prevalence of atherosclerotic plaque in their arteries compared to age-matched, more sedentary controls. And I think, the question as to why we don't know, but it could be because there's significant amount of stress on the cardiovascular system combined perhaps with I can eat what I want because I exercise type of mentality. So, so the benefits of exercise are tremendous. Movement is medicine, but at the same time, as athletes, we tend to take it to more the extreme side of it, which ultimately may be a bit of a double-edged sword. Yeah.
Yeah, I've got a related to that because you mentioned movement, and one of the things I've gotten militant both with myself but with my athletes is how important is movement patterns. So it's one thing to go out for a run, or to lift, but to do it the right way. How important is that? And is it something that, okay, let's say I didn't always do mobility work. I call it the flossing of the athletic world, is we all know we should do it and we don't. How important is that, or is that something that came up as you guys were writing the book?
I think from a very top level, and then I'll let Sharon pepper in a bit more nuance with her extensive expertise in that. Like certainly as we age, for example, I'm going to use bone density as a good example, especially for women. Using either your own body weight to basically contrast for resistance, or adding weight as you move every single time that you're electing to be physically active. That not only preserves but reinforces the fidelity of your bone structure over time. And that is just pure biophysiology. You're adding weight to a system, and by proxy, you're making what is the core of that system, your bone infrastructure, that much more strong. So, and again, many women shy away from doing a lot more like heavyweight exercise for whatever reason. But again, like I think that is such a vital piece, at least from a medical standpoint, to avoid a break if there is a fall. But again, it's that whole how do we elevate the cost of prevention when we are so habituated to just, okay, well, when you fall after age 55, this is going to be your fate. And in the military, we make, we certainly, we referenced this as landing left of bang, and bang being the diagnosis, the disease, the disability, et cetera. And really just finding, again, a stronger, more robust currency to get an individual bought in, to get them more excited about why preempting and proactively investing in something like a long game for performance or a long game for their health is going to be that much more palatable, for lack of a better term, down the road. So Sharon, I'm keen to hear more of your thoughts on that.
Yeah. When I talk to my executive clients, the CEOs and so on, I present something called the fitness pyramid. So at the base of the pyramid is cardiovascular or repeated use of large muscle groups. I mean, that's cardiorespiratory exercise right there. And within that, you have training intensity distributions, and we need to balance those training intensity distributions. Above that, of course, is the ability to produce force. That's a functional thing. It's a bone thing. And so having good stability. So when we talk about joint health, for example, we want stability, but we also want mobility, and we want to balance those two. And so, there's nothing that says you're old like feeling tight and stiff. And so I do think with aging that mobility training becomes as important as well as the strength training. Above that then is something called, proprioception, agility, balance. And really that is actually more strongly tied to risk of hip fractures. So if people trip, they fall, they lose balance. So that's a critical component as well. And so I think, all of these aspects of movement and exercise, are important, but probably some get more important as you get older. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. That's interesting because I've got I'm sitting right next to our exercise room that we built in our house, and there's a big 20-gallon bucket of mobility tools, balance tools.
Yeah.
My wife's like, "What are you doing with all these?" I'm like, "I'm preparing for the day I fall down. It's going to happen." So
I would have preferred Regan chose 60, not 55.
yeah, 60 hurts a little bit.
Yeah. I'm like, I would have
for me.
I'm softening the blow, guys. That's what's going on. I'm softening.
That's all right.
With that, I think, I don't know whether there's two things that kind of came to mind on that. One, the high intensity training piece, right? And so as you get older, like those sessions are more important, but harder to recover from. So for me, it was like, how do you fuel differently, or how are people fueling when you talk about staying around longer? Because those sessions become important, but I think more people leave them and you kind of go steady state, Z2, Z3, hanging out in there all the time. And then are there any highlights on the recovery side? Because I think recovery in particular, when you hear about it in the marketplace, it's always, this is how a triathlete recovers. And like, I'm not a 30-year-old triathlete anymore. And so are there differences for aging triathletes on their recovery mix of nutrition?
Do you want me to take that, Regan? Okay. Yeah, I mean, I think paying attention to the recovery piece, of course, as you get older, and we devote a whole chapter actually to that very topic. And, I think that the foundation of being able to recover well is periodization of training. So balancing that training intensity. And I do, I am a fan of the bimodal model, kind of hard on the hard days, easy on the easy days. The second is nutrition. And, there's a couple of things that happen as we get older. One is increased fatigability. So we tend to experience more fatigue for the same effort. And part of the reason for that is because our mitochondrial function is compromised, likely due to oxidative stress. That's where a lot of the oxidative stress happens. And so part of the benefits of eating foods, particularly plant foods that are rich in antioxidants, that's where that comes in. Not only does eating antioxidant-rich foods help quench oxidative stress, it also results in the expression of genes that promote production of our own endogenous antioxidants like SOD, superoxide dismutase, and so on. So I think the nutrition piece is really important, and then the sleep piece it becomes more important as well. And that's sort of that's kind of the foundation to everything as an athlete. And then we have, the icing on the cake, whether it's the cold plunge or the foam rolling or the massage. I mean, those are nice, but they're not foundational. Those are kind of the marginal gains, perhaps. But, pay attention to the big stuff. And then, yeah, if you can do the little stuff, great.
Yeah, I for sure have seen, you differentiate your recovery for like LT1 versus LT2 efforts? Because you mentioned fatigue or durability, and like for sure, kind of LT2 durability with age, that's been the thing I've seen decline at the fastest rate. LT1, I argue just because we're older, we have more patience. Like we can actually hang out there probably as longer than, others. I haven't found that durability to change, but that kind of high intensity, and Mike does a lot more of the cycling piece. So like, how long is someone going to jump to the front and push the pace when you go out with a local group? Because that's a bigger issue than if we ride 3 or 4 hours.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think the other piece I should mention is because of that fatigability, we tend to rely a little bit more on glycolytic systems, a little more anaerobic perhaps as well. And so that's where the need for higher intakes of carbohydrate becomes more essential because we're and high intensity efforts are more reliant on glycogen and so on and glucose. And so it's both during, consuming during as well as consuming post, pre and post. And what we find from the research when we look at typical athletes, not so much elite athletes, but age group athletes, is 9 times out of 10, they're not consuming enough carbohydrate and they're overemphasizing protein. They're getting way more protein than they need. And so it's really about carbohydrate adequacy. And then, of course, on top of that, we have to consider the nutrient density of those carbohydrates as well.
Yeah.
And so I think it's a combination of those things.
And I think just a little, soundbite that I want to throw in that Sharon has been, constantly repeating. And that is this whole idea of, she alluded to, like, we're a protein obsessed culture. And I think really where we need to shift our focus is, Sharon says, don't count your macros, count your fiber. And that's presuming that you're getting adequate caloric intake too. And that's where we're going to circle right back to this idea of what creates the need for recovery, certainly as we age over time, with the sum of our choices from a nutritional standpoint, sleep, movement, stress management, how that adds over time, and how we'll call it the relative inflammation burden that every human being is carrying around with them at all times. So it matters what you're doing from an extrinsic standpoint and how you're either fueling the inflammation fire that's in your body or how you're quelling it and essentially trying to put it out as fast as possible. And because, of course, like as you exercise, that's extra inflammation that you're generating. But also it's dialed in with like how fast you can get rid of the inflammation. And one of the things that I love to highlight is one of my patients, former AFSOC pilot, so special operations. He was part of the world-class athlete program for the U.S. Air Force, remarkable runner. And I loved hearing his narrative after he and I started our lifestyle performance medicine journey. And we were dialing in with tart cherry juice and priming ahead with beets and the recovery. And again, just using nature as the opportunity to basically pull out as much inflammation after the fact and to prime as well from the launch. And I loved hearing that he actually got faster and became a better runner after he left his tenure in his undergraduate university time window over time. So again, the scale is a upward slope, not necessarily a downward trajectory. And I love that. And that's the testament to that.
That's really cool. So as we those are all the highlights, and obviously people can hopefully grab a book and read as you go. How do you talk about people setting their goals to get there? Because I think there's this, what you have in the book is kind of I won't say blue skies, rainbows, and unicorns because it's achievable. It's all there. How do you talk with people about how you go from where they are now? I guess twofold, how they go from where they are now to, kind of getting to that place. And do you do it quick? How would you prioritize things? And then kind of a little self-centered for those of us with issues like Crohn's, asking for a friend. How do you make those edits, and how do you work with people to kind of edit along those? Because fiber is actually not necessarily my friend. And so how do you ride the line? It's a good example of it's the biggest issue I struggle with actually. I can talk to you guys about it. Most people are like, who cares? But it's a struggle there. But more importantly for people, how do you get them on that journey so they don't do the infamous, January 1, join the gym, January 10th, I'm never going to the gym thing.
Love it. Yeah. I'll launch with that. And Sean, I'd love to chat with you more about, all the pathology. Like, this is remarkable. And there's tons of research too that I want to make sure is on your radar. Again, because fun part of medicine, right? Despite diagnoses. But to start with, every patient I see, we always say your baseline is your most imperative thing. Like, you have to know a baseline, whether that's lab, whether that's personal records, personal goals, speed, etc. So always having that to launch from a jumping point, because then you're going to retain your objectivity and you're going to track what you change over time. And that's the kicker, is just putting something in front of a person that they'll be able to see and reference and say, oh, shoot, look at what is changing, and look at what the secondary and tertiary outcomes as a result of that change are changing right in tandem with it. And so what I like to tell patients, or give patients the options for, is saying, hey, guess what? You have all the 6 pillars of lifestyle medicine. Typically, the very American response is like, well, what's going to get me the fastest, the farthest, blah. And it's food. And that's the beauty part. So I always do Doc Stig's 7-day challenge. 7 days is 168 hours. You can do anything for that time frame. Start again, track your fiber. Print out an 8.5 by 11 sheet with the month on it. In the middle of every single day, I want you to write how many grams of fiber you ate in a day. Because guess what? Contextually, probably right now, 97% of everybody who walks into my office is not meeting that mark. So putting it in a place where you're going to see it, put it on your fridge, put it in your bathroom, it doesn't really matter. What you're going to do in secondary fashion, in the top right corner of every square for every day, you are going to rank your energy level on a scale of 0 to 10. This is where we retain our objectivity, because me as a doctor, I can't be like, they said their energy's better. I have to be like, there's been a 50% improvement in the energy as a result of changing fiber into, we have to put it in a place where if I had to publish this data, I would have to have hard and fast, yes, objective/subjective data, but contextualizing it again. So we start watching people change their fiber. It starts ticking up. And guess what happens? Either energy starts ticking up, or things like brain fog start ticking down. Why? Because we're following science. We're getting rid of inflammation. We're helping them refocus on something as very imperative as like the great de-inflamer, and that is fiber. So that is one little nugget that I will throw out there for how I help my patients launch. Sharon, what do you got?
Yeah, I mean, I think from a dietary perspective, it is good to like be aware of what's your current intake, because a lot of times we think, oh yeah, I eat a pretty healthy diet, but until you actually start tracking and writing things down, and it's like, oh, okay, maybe I'm eating a little more junk food than I thought I was, or processed food, or whatever it is. So my approach to clients is always think about pick those things that I need to eat more of. I need to include more of this in my diet, more fruit, more vegetables, and then work on that. Start with a piece of fruit every day. And then progress to, okay, two or three pieces of fruit. I mean, the actual recommendation for fruits and vegetables is 9 to 12 a day. Which, like Regan said, 97% of people probably don't even get close to that. And so just kind of working towards these goals, and it's a process. It's not going to happen overnight. It's a process. And, the other thing I tell people is, if you can't do it on your own, get help. Get coaching help. Get someone that, like Regan, that you're accountable to, that can sort of give you, here's the path forward based on your current preferences and situation. So that would be my recommendation. Yeah,
I love that advice, because I often, when working with folks and they have these big goals, and I call it the syllabus effect, where you show up for class and they give you the syllabus and you look at all the stuff you have to do that semester and you're like, I'm never going to get this done. Yeah. And so when we talk about goals, it's like, what's the smallest thing you could do today towards your goal? Like, don't go buy all this fiber. Like, if you could just start eating one more vegetable today. Yeah. Great. Love it. That's that the smallest amount you could do. And people can truly, pun intended, swallow that, and see. It also gives them some progress to look back and say, well, how did I get here? Well, it was this compounding thing of small steps. And it just reinforces that I don't have to complete the syllabus today. It's a journey. It's a long-term investment. So I love that
One
approach.
thing I'll add to that, Michael, is I usually ask, is everyone in your household open to the same journey, or how's that going to go? Because I'll use syllabus example. If you're on that syllabus and they're on, I'm not in that class, or you're in the wrong class, that becomes a much harder thing. And actually the accountability becomes more difficult. But, if you can get everyone kind of on the same path, life is so much easier. At least they understand what you're trying to achieve. And they're like, okay, I am not, I just can imagine going back to when my kids are in the house. 12 servings of vegetables and fruits was not going to go down. But if we were on the plan of trying to get them to 6 or 8, which is more than 3, more than 3, like, that's fair. But if the team's going, paddling in the same direction, I always find that helps a lot. Or at least I know with an athlete, like, hey, I'm going to have to try to hold them extra accountable to getting things in or taking things out, because they're not eating the same, the house is not helping them.
Yeah. And Sean, I think to that end, like we call that stealth health. And I think not only the stealth health bit of it, but like getting it woven in. And I think it's much easier now in 2026 than it was even in 2000 to find things that are going to be palatable for kids and for ourselves as the ones largely cooking for our kids. Or even just friends and colleagues. But I love that point that you bring up that I foot stomp as well, is that when you can weave in either a partner or a spouse or a friend or a family member to this journey, it becomes a compounded interest, because guess what? They're going to start seeing the gains in a different capacity perhaps than you. Maybe they're focusing on like, I want to come off my high blood pressure meds or whatever. We're going to do this together. I'm going to beat my PR, whatever. Find the opportunity for that Venn diagram overlap to function, and then you basically build it accountability partners with one another, and it's fun and it's delicious, I might add. So Sharon and I will share tons of recipes and tons of the big kickers that she and I focus on for high protein, high fiber, high recovery food options too.
Can I add one thing about the fiber, Sean?
Yeah.
So if people haven't been eating a lot of fiber up to this point, lean into it. That is the best recommendation we can give. Start with, a tablespoon of beans, and gradually then over time increase your intake. And beans tend to be, I pick beans because that tends to be the highest for the amount of calories and protein, the highest source of protein, fiber. But the other thing you can do is sort of start the digestion process, like do smoothies or green smoothies or vegetable, whatever. You start the breakdown of fiber ready. Another one is fermented vegetables. And so with fermentation, you've already started the digestive process, and that can contribute to gut health as well, and help with tolerating higher levels of fiber for people.
I hadn't heard that one. So there's so much stuff. We could probably go for hours. I know it's in a lot of it's in the book and what have you. But to sum up kind of one tip, if you could, if people, had made it 45 minutes with us so far, and they could have one takeaway or one highlight from you, what would that be?
I will happily lead with this. And this, again, here comes the gal in uniform full force. And that is, for the love of God, be your own best test pilot. Nothing will mean more to you than you trying this and experiencing the remarkable outcomes that come as a result of, again, following the science, following the evidence-based medicine that Sharon and I have both spent our professional careers in vetting, reviewing, and now bringing to the table to all of you in a consolidated, collated deliverable. And that is our book, Staying in the Game. And I think another key point that I want to just lean into is unlearning is so important. We are so habituated to a culture that has fed us, pun intended, the same protocol. This is how you should do X, Y, Z, blah, blah, blah. If you're doing it this way, you're missing out. Actually, no. This now comes with a favorite Maya Angelou quote of mine: "Do the best with what you know, and then when you know better, do better." And this is us doing better. So, Sharon, what are your final closeouts?
Yeah, I would echo that, as well as reiterating a little bit, don't be taken in by quick fixes, shortcuts, biohacks, keep to the fundamentals, consistency, periodization of training, nutrient-rich, fiber-rich nutrition, and good sleep. And that's going to get you 90% of the way. So.
Now, the only thing I'm going to add is with all the stuff that's out there, and we're in New England, you can do this indoors. So, you don't have to go out. And also what struck me in the book is, it doesn't matter actually if you're not an athlete or which sport you're doing, it's kind of universal. So it gives a good baseline for whatever you're doing, a great foundation to lean into. And it's not sport specific, or a lot of times people get caught up in the, super sport specific thing. And am I a swimmer or a triathlete? Am I like getting caught up? It's a really good foundation.
And Sean, I love that. We like to say, tongue in cheek, if you have a human body, you're an athlete. And now we have the opportunity to stop leaving our performance gains on the table. So we're here to help you all.
On the table, that was a pun intended.
That was also a pun.
More puns.
More puns, more fun.
This has been great. Well, so for those that are out there, we will put the links out there. There'll be a discount code out there for the book. It is a great book you should have. I enjoyed it. So hence reaching out and trying to finagle the authors to come on today. I really appreciate you guys taking an hour out of your time. I'm not so worried about Michael. He doesn't have a PhD, but I'm super stoked you guys spent an hour with us to kind of cover the highlights of this, and hopefully people will get out, and if people have questions, they can reach out to you directly.
Awesome.
Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Sean. We appreciate you guys and the work you do. Thank you so much.